Alright, so we're going to go over in this lesson order fulfillment, right? So, order fulfillment really is kind of one of the final stages of your internet business, right? So we began with a discussion, a few discussions of creating the website, some things to avoid, things to think about as you're getting your website up and running. And then the second thing that we kind of looked at was different avenues that you can use to direct traffic to your website, the marketing avenues that are available to internet businesses. And then the third thing is, once you begin to have traffic to your website, now you got to fulfill the orders. Sometimes we overlook that. We just assume that if we've got enough traffic coming in, enough people buying, enough cash coming in, that fulfilling the order will be no problem. Or sometimes when we're doing our budgeting and we're thinking about the profit that we'll make, we don't correctly think through the costs of fulfilling the order, right? So there's a few things to think about as far as cost goes. I mean, now typically you're going to have some sort of a shipping estimate, right? So that they're going to pay for their own shipping costs when they purchase from you. Or what a lot of places are doing now is if your order exceeds a certain threshold, then they do free shipping, right? Which there is no such thing as free shipping, by the way, right? All that means is the company themselves will eat the cost, will pay for it themselves, because they're making enough profit on the rest of your order to make it worthwhile. So if you're going to do something like that, you got to figure out, do your own numbers, what would be the minimum that they would have to order from you in order for it to be worthwhile for you to give them free shipping, pay for the shipping yourself as an incentive, right? So I mean, there's some companies that I buy some supplement things for some of our drinks that one of the main reasons that I order from them and not their competition is that they're free shipping on a large order, which we typically have a large order, and they offer the free shipping. It becomes an advantage. It saves us a lot of money. So you want to think through some of those things. Your larger orders, they're going to be looking for stuff like that, because they have the option to choose a little bit, and so they're going to want, if possible, some free shipping. Every business is different, right? Or maybe some other kind of incentive for a larger order or something. But as far as the shipping goes, the actual cost of the shipping is only part of it, right? As far as what you're going to pay the carrier, right? So whether it's the post office, UPS, FedEx, whoever you use, DHL, there's several different companies you can use as the carrier, but then there's some other costs on top of that you have to factor in as well. Shipping materials, like things like the box that you're going to put it in. I mean, you got to buy that, unless you're going to ship it priority mail from the post office, then they provide you with the box. But they can be a little pricey too. It's convenient, it's real easy, but at the same time, you're not getting any discount much from the post office in terms of volume, right? Whereas we'll talk about this a little bit. There are some other carriers where if you're a business, you can negotiate a little bit better of a deal with them. But you got to have your own box, right? You've got to have your own packing materials. Whether it's the little airbags you put in, or the styrofoam peanuts, or some kind of the bubble wrap. You got to have something to keep your product from being damaged in shipping. And then other things people don't even think about sometimes is like tape to tape up the box. You got to print a receipt, some kind of invoice to put in there, right? You've got to print the label about where it's going, the address, all that kind of stuff. So there's a few things, the costs of that, it's not a real massive deal, but I mean, the tape you got to buy, the packaging supplies. I mean, sometimes boxes can be 20 cents to 50 cents or more, depending on the size of the box. So all of that factors in, and then you have to pay someone, you know, if you're a small business, you're doing it yourself, then you got to take the time to do it. If not, then you've got to pay somebody's salary who's packaging up your products to ship out. So, you know, you may be charging them for what your carrier is charging you. So if UPS says, hey, we're going to charge you $10 to ship that, then you pass that $10 charge on to your customer. But what you still have to pay for is the employee who's packing it, the materials they're using to pack it, right? So just because the customer pays for the postage doesn't necessarily mean that all the costs of order fulfillment are taken care of in that. So you have to factor that in to your profit margin, right? And the price that you're charging and the profit you expect to make. All right, so a couple of things here. When we're talking about order fulfillment, there's really two main branches of thought, right? One is keeping inventory on hand, right? So your inventory that you have, right, and how you're going to manage your inventory. And the second one is the shipping process, getting the order out the door efficiently, right? Okay, so let's get into it. We're going to look at inventory. Well, before we get into inventory, this has to do with inventory and order fulfillment, but it's the warranty part, right? That when you ship something out, depending on what industry you're in, if they don't want it and they want to return it or there's something wrong with it, first of all, I believe by law you're supposed to give them at least a 7-day window on internet orders, that if they want to return it, you know, just like if you go down to the store and you want to take something back, you know, unless you specifically state on there no refunds or something like that, but if you leave that unstated, I believe the general rule is that there has to be at least a 7-day window for returns by law. But maybe they're not returning it because they don't want it. Maybe it's broken, right? Now typically there is a manufacturer's warranty, and so you know you have to look through. If something's wrong and there's a manufacturer's warranty, there are different instructions. Sometimes the manufacturer will have them ship it to you, right, and then they'll get it from you, or just send them a new one or something. Or sometimes they have to ship it directly back to the manufacturer. So you need to at least be aware of what is the policy for fulfilling the warranty on this. Now, if you're a small business and it's your own business, you know, and it's your own products that you're producing in-house, you need to have thought through these issues. How am I going to handle it if somebody doesn't want it? Sometimes we don't even think about that because we assume everybody's going to love our product, right? But what happens to the person that gets it and they don't love it and they don't like it at all and they want their money back? You know, you gotta factor that into your profit margin too, because you can't just assume that you're going to have 100% sales with no returns. There's going to be a percentage of your product that is returned, right? And then you lose almost all of it. You can't turn around and sell it again. I mean, some things you can, some things you can't. If it's some kind of a food item, vitamins, supplements, you're probably not going to want to turn around and sell that. If it's clothing and they've taken the tags off, probably not going to want to sell that. If it's electronics, they've opened it all up and the packaging is all messed up. I mean, you know, you could probably get something out of these, but you're not going to be able to turn around and sell them for new again. At least you shouldn't. Or, you know, if they sell it and it's broken, right? They buy it and it's broken, you know, then it's just a loss to you. So you have to factor that into your profit and understand that, you know, just your cost of goods, you know, cost of goods is how much it costs you to get it, right? And then your profit is what you're selling it for. So say if you get a pair of jeans that cost you $20 to get them, you're selling them for $40. There's a difference of $20 there. But when you're factoring in your profit, you can't just assume that that's going to be $20 of profit, because there's other things that have to come out, like returns and, you know, shipping things and, you know, all the other stuff, right? Okay. So, and make sure that your return policy is clearly explained somewhere on your website. So however you come to your conclusion about what you're going to do with returns, what kind of warranty you're going to have, what type of customer service policies you're going to have, make sure those are on your website, right? Okay. So inventory. Obviously, the first thing that you have to keep track of inventory. You got to know, right? You got to know what you have. a lot of the e-commerce solutions, number two there, will have the option for you to track it, right? So all you have to do for most of the e-commerce platforms is, for each product, you just tell it how many you have to start with, right? So you say, oh, we've got 20 of those in-house. And then every time it sells one, it knows then to subtract that from your inventory, and it will track it for you. And it will say, okay, well, we just sold one over here. Now, where you have to watch out for is if you have more than one channel of sales. So say if you have an e-commerce website and you're also selling things through Amazon, right? So if you sell 3 of them through Amazon and 1 of them through your own website, your website's going to show that you have 19 because it has no idea that you sold the other ones over there at Amazon. So if you're using your website as your inventory control, you would have to go in and manually change that and say, no, now we've got 16. And you can manually change it because you're going to get new stuff. So if you get 10 more in, you just go back in there and say, okay, now we've got 26 or whatever you've got. And so you can use your e-commerce platform as a way to track the inventory. You just got to be aware of multiple channels, right? So you can do it that way, or if you just want to do a more brick and mortar, pen and paper kind of approach, and maybe have your computer, a database, or something like that, where you kind of also keep your own records in house. That's doable, particularly on a small scale. The larger you get, the more automated you want that to be. You definitely want to be able to scale your business larger, and so if you've got to go in and manually count everything, it's going to limit what you can do in terms of size, without having to hire people just to count stuff, right? And so if you can come up with a more efficient way of doing that, like some sort of database or using your website to track those kind of things, it's probably a good solution, particularly for a small business right off the bat. Why waste money on things that aren't necessary? Just use your website to track your inventory, keep track of it on there, and then you gotta factor in shipping times and shipping delays from your provider, right? So you're getting either your raw materials and making something from your factory or store, or you're purchasing from somebody else who's making it, and you're kind of the middleman. You're turning around and selling it. However, you're getting your inventory. There's shipping delays, all that kind of stuff. So you don't want to wait till you're out, right? So you've got to determine what is my reorder number, right? When I hit 3 left, I better reorder so that I don't have to disappoint a customer who's trying to buy from me, and I just don't have it. I don't want to lose business. I don't want to hold any extra inventory that I don't have to. But at the same time, I don't want to run out. Right, and then you got to factor in: am I buying these things in bulk? And so that's another consideration for whenever you're trying to, purchase more inventory. Is the fact that you got to schedule when you have enough money to purchase with a kind of a scale, right? So that you're getting the value of a large purchase, right? The larger your purchase, the more of a discount you get per item, right? So you may not want to, if you sell one, you may not want to then immediately buy the next one to replace your inventory, I guess is what I'm getting at, right? So you want to schedule that to where you can purchase and maybe get some kind of a bulk discount. So you hold off on refilling your inventory until you've sold enough to where you can buy the next wave, perhaps even more than you did the first time, right? You're refilling your inventory in larger and larger amounts each time if you can, so that you're getting more and more of a discount per item. So that's an important thing to keep in mind, and to figure out, what are my repurchase schedule numbers? What does that look like? Is there a discount for repurchasing? And then the other thing you got to keep in mind whenever you repurchase inventory, that your shipping costs are typically a little bit lower the larger you buy it, right? So if you're just buying one at a time, you end up paying more on the shipping of each item, as well as more for each individual item itself, right? Okay. And then one last thing here on inventory, you have to determine how you're going to handle your inventory, because you don't necessarily have to have some kind of a warehouse, or keep this stuff stored at your office, your home, wherever. You don't necessarily have to have it in person, although many businesses that works best, but that's not the only way to do it. You can do something called drop shipping. Drop shipping, if you're not familiar with it, is when you take say some product and you advertise it. Say it's jeans. You advertise this pair of jeans on your website, and then but you don't have them yet, right? But you have a deal with the manufacturer, and you know what you can get them for, and you're selling them on your website for more than what it's going to cost you to buy them. So you're selling them for $40 on your website, but you have a deal with the people that make the jeans that you can get them for $25, right? Because you're trying to turn around and sell them. So somebody buys from you for $40, and then you immediately then buy from the manufacturer, right? But instead of having the manufacturer ship that pair of jeans to you, and then you would have to then ship them to the customers, that's a lot of extra shipping costs, right? What a lot of companies will do is the manufacturer will drop ship. So the manufacturer will ship that pair of jeans directly to your customer, right? And so that's drop shipping. So they order it from you, you order it from the manufacturer, and give the manufacturer their address, and the manufacturer will ship it directly to them. Now you got to make sure that it's drop shipping, and that you're not just giving the company, the manufacturer, their address, because if it's not an agreement for drop shipping, a couple of things are going to happen. Number one, the manufacturer will probably send it in their own box and not a blank box, right? So it won't even look like it's coming from your company if it's coming directly from the manufacturer, right? And they'll look at it and they'll say, well, this doesn't have anything to do with this person. Where does this person's business even fit into this, right? So that's one. And then two, if you don't have an agreement with the drop shipping, they're likely to put an invoice in there, right? Because just a regular shipment, if you don't have an agreement that this is a drop ship, they'll put an invoice in there. So what's the problem with that? When your customer gets it, they're going to open up, and the invoice is going to read $25 for that pair of jeans, but they know they paid $40 for that pair of jeans, right? So the company, the manufacturer, is just putting an invoice in for what they received, which was $25, right? But you charge the customer $40, and so the customer then will get upset with that. 60% of the people that if you shipped them and the invoice is less than what they paid, they're going to complain, right? And you're going to have a hard time explaining that, because then they're going to want to just go straight to the manufacturer themselves, right? Or whatever, they'll do something. But they're not going to be happy. It's going to make them feel like they got ripped off. Even though, in reality, every time you buy something, the person you bought it from makes a chunk of money. That's why they're doing it. But when you see it with your own eyes, how much they made, sometimes it's a different feeling for whatever reason. All right, so you could hold the inventory yourself, but then you're responsible for all the shipping. You can do the drop shipping, but you just got to make sure you set that up right, And then the other issue comes in with, okay, say if they order it from you, you turn around and order it from the manufacturer, and the manufacturer says, "Oh, sorry, we're out of those for the next 3 weeks." Because you didn't know, it's not your company, you didn't know they were going to be out of those, so you're still selling them on your website. And now you got to go back in and refund these people or something like that. So there's pros and cons to each of these. Or you can use an order fulfillment service, right? So there's companies out there that will, that have warehouse space and stuff, and you can have your products held there without you actually being the one to hold the inventory, right? And then you email them every time you have an order, and and where it's going to, and they're responsible for getting it packaged up and shipped out for you. So there are order fulfillment services. My favorite order fulfillment service, one that you should really consider, is Amazon, right? Amazon is an order fulfillment service. That's what they are. And so the way it works with Amazon is you have two options. You put your product on Amazon, and you create your product listing, right? You have two ways that you can do it. Either you can ship directly from your own office, right? Somebody buys it, Amazon tells you, hey, they bought it for this much amount, ship it to them, and you've got it in your inventory and you ship it to them. Or you can ship a crate of your product to Amazon, and they will hold it in their warehouse, and whenever somebody goes onto their website and buys it, they ship it directly out of their warehouse, and you never have to do anything with it. All you had to do was ship a crate of them to Amazon, and they will hold them for you, and anytime somebody buys them, Amazon ships it out for you. And so Amazon gets their good shipping rates and all that kind of stuff, and that gets passed on to your consumer, the cheaper shipping price. Most of the time with Amazon would do the free shipping too with their own fulfillment and things like that. So the only thing you pay in terms of shipping would be the cost of shipping it to Amazon. But Amazon has good deals with their carrier because they're their largest customer, and so they pass that on to you. So as a business owner, you get a pretty good deal on the cost of shipping your stuff to Amazon, right? And so that's a good way to do it. Now the downside is they're going to charge you a couple bucks more on each product to do that, right? It doesn't come free. So, but with the ease of it, because they can ship and do the whole order fulfillment thing much cheaper than you can. So even though you're going to lose $2 or $3 per product, right? On depending on the it's a certain percentage, depending on the price of your product, you're going to lose a little bit as compared to shipping it yourself. But the advantages of having Amazon do everything, all you got to do is just send it to them, and then they handle it from there. Is pretty, it's pretty advantageous for a lot of people. So that's something you might want to check out. All right, so let's wrap this up. Shipping is the other end of it, right? Of actually, getting it in the box, getting it shipped out. If you're not going to use an order fulfillment service or drop shipping, then you've got to take the inventory yourself and make sure it arrives where it needs to arrive, right? So my advice there is, if you're going to do it yourself, you gotta shop around. It's just like any other service. It's not consistent, right? And so depending on what you're shipping, the weight, the size, your location, where you're planning on shipping it to primarily, a lot of these factors make it totally different, from one shipping carrier to the next. So you really got to shop around and figure out, for what you're trying to do, who's going to give you the best deal, right? Sometimes the post office may be a little more convenient up front, but a lot of times you can't get the discounts with them, right? Whereas like UPS and FedEx tend to be a little more business friendly, right? So think about it this way: whenever you order from online, the majority of the time, if you order a box, something that's it's not a letter, or something that has to be shipped in a box, the majority of the time it's going to come from either UPS or FedEx, right? So what does that tell you? That tells you that they're the ones that are giving the best price to business owners to ship that kind of stuff, right? If the post office was giving the best price for that kind of stuff, then most of your packages would come from them. But the truth is, most of your business things that you would purchase from an online store, most of them come through UPS or FedEx, because a lot of times they're willing to work with businesses, and that as you start to grow, they will give you discounts because you're sending them business. And so as your business grows, you can develop a relationship with UPS and FedEx or DHL that allows you to negotiate with them a little bit on cost of shipping, right? And then quick shipping. That's entirely up to you. The speed that you ship it, and I don't mean the speed like, are you paying for next day or overnight? You probably want to give people those options, right? Because some people will pay that, right? Some people will pay the extra $20 if they're in a bind and they need it, right? So you want to have that option available, because you could lose some customers if you don't have that, because every once in a while somebody needs something and they need it, pronto, and so you want to have that option on there for the overnight delivery or next day or something. So you want to make sure that's in there. But then the other thing, when I say quick shipping, I mean the turnaround time from when they placed the order to when you put it in the carrier's hand, right? So the processing time is typically what that's called. But you got to make sure that you have quick processing time, because your repeat business often hinges on how they perceive the speed at which you fulfilled their order. If they order something and they don't get it for like a month, then they say, you know what, I don't want to deal with it. There's too many other people selling the same thing. I'm going to go to somebody else, right? And so an advantage that you can get in the marketplace that will keep your customers happy. They may not buy from you just because of that, but you probably won't lose them because of this either, as long as you give quick shipping. You can lose somebody if you take a long time to fulfill their order, right? And so, but if you're always prompt and always consistent, and you're getting your products shipped to them and they're getting them quickly within a week or so, then you'll find that reliability is an asset to you. It's a competitive advantage that is totally within your control, right? How quickly you process your orders, right? So make sure you do that quickly if you can, right? If you're doing drop shipping, it's kind of out of your hands. But if you're holding inventory yourself, the speed in which you fulfill that order is entirely up to you. And so you want to put in a system right off the bat where same day or next day at the latest, whatever they order from you is packed up in a box and down at the carriers. In fact, a lot of the carriers, you set up a deal with them and they'll come by and pick up whatever products you have that day, and you don't even have to leave. They'll send a carrier by and get them and take them in for you every day. And so you want to set up some kind of system like that so that every day, whatever it is you've got is out, right? You don't want to even fool around with wasting your customers' time and losing sales for no reason, right? Okay. All right, so that's the gist of order fulfillment, right? It'll take a little getting used to. It'll take shopping around for some good deals, and it'll take getting your system in place, and it may require you to do a few different things. Maybe you hold some things in inventory. Maybe you drop ship a few products. Maybe you use order fulfillment for some things. I think it's a good idea to maybe have your own website and have all of your own inventory in-house, but then also use an Amazon and ship them some inventory so that they can do order fulfillment for you through their website, but yet the sales from your own personal website, you may fulfill those the traditional way by keeping inventory on hand. Okay.